Welcome back to Cinematic Sarcastic, the podcast that talks all things movies and television. I'm Natalie, and I'm your host. On today's episode, we are going to be talking about Monster the Jeffrey Dahmer story. This is a limited run series that just dropped on Netflix, I believe. It has quite a few episodes. I did not make it through all of the episodes, I will be completely honest. I think I made it about 4 or 5 episodes in, I want to say, before finally turning it off. I understand that this series is getting amazing reviews. It's got critic acclaim. Like, there are tons of people saying, Evan Peters deserves an award for this one, an Oscar for this one. I guess this review lands me squarely with some of the critics on this side and not so much with general audiences. This one was rough for me. I really like true crime. I will have to say, typically more so the documentary style of true crime, the interview type things that happen with friends and family and that kind of thing, because I feel like when it comes to stories like this one, not specifically Jeffrey Dahmer, but just, stories of murder and things like that, and true crime just in general, I prefer the stories where at least the family is involved. You kind of get to see them at least somehow included in things. And so I guess for me, in my brain, there is a level of respect there that obviously if the families didn't want to be involved, they don't have to be. And Monster kind of reminds me, or is giving me, the vibes of the TV series that recently came out within this last year of Pamela Anderson and Tommy Lee, where Tommy Lee and Pamela Anderson spoke out and were very adamant about not wanting the series to continue. And Hollywood essentially gave them both the middle finger and said, well, fuck you, we're going to do it anyway because entertainment. And Monster, the Jeffrey Dahmer story, feels like that to me. It feels very much like murder for entertainment. And I don't know why this one feels different than Under the Banner of Heaven, because Under the Banner of Heaven, I feel like, was done similarly. It was a television show. It wasn't a documentary. The families were not involved there. But I think that it focused so much more on what built up to the murder, i.e., the Mormon fundamentalism and kind of how that affected the family. And very little of that television series centered around the murders, centered around kind of what had happened there. And Monster, for me, was a lot more difficult to kind of sit through because, for one, there is a lot of sort of, what is the word I'm even looking for? Like, you get to see these victims prior to him and sort of what led them to running into him and, essentially what led up to them losing their lives. And a lot of it focused also on kind of his childhood and what went on with his parents, which I understand is kind of a critical point to his story. But there were some instances when I felt like the show was kind of making him in a way look like a bit of a tragic figure, or trying to maybe put him as not, like, even though the title is Monster, the Jeffrey Dahmer story, there were some instances in there where I feel like there was the intention of maybe trying to give him some pity or make the audience feel sorry for him, as opposed to making him look exactly like the title would entail. The man was a monster, and he murdered 17 innocent people. And I just have such a hard time with a television series making Jeffrey Dahmer an icon and making him this exciting thing to watch on television. And it's gross, it's gross to me. And it's gross kind of, even though they don't show anything. Here's the weird thing about Monster. It doesn't show anything, but there's, it doesn't really show like the horrible, despicable things that he did to these people. And it kind of doesn't have to, because you get to see sort of how terrified they were and how desperately they wanted to get away. And that almost makes it worse in my mind. I have an incredibly hard time with things like this. Like if you guys listened to like my Sins of Our Mother episode, shows like this, television series, documentaries, I am not the type of person that sits down with popcorn typically to watch true crime or listen to true crime. 9 times out of 10, typically, if not 10 times out of 10, I cry through the whole thing. It makes me feel so terrible for the victims. And really, it's just, I have no understanding of how someone can do something like that. And so trying to sit down and watch episode after episode after episode of this man doing these horrible, disgusting, despicable things to other people, it's hard for me. And I genuinely just can't do it. And this show just rubbed me the wrong way. And I feel like it kind of rubbed me the wrong way right out of the gate. Starting out with, the poor man that actually got away from Jeffrey Dahmer and ended up being the reason that Jeffrey Dahmer got caught. And I think just out of respect for all of the people that kind of lost their lives, I don't know that I think that we needed this television series. That being said, I understand that true crime is a huge, draw for people. And obviously there is a market for it, or we wouldn't have this series in the first place. And I think series wise, like production value wise, it's good. The acting is really good. The fact that so many people are saying, Evan Peters has done such a remarkable job portraying Jeffrey Dahmer is kind of what feels gross to me. I don't know that we need someone to play a monster so well that he looks like the monster and acts like the monster and is perfectly the monster for this television series so that everyone kind of gets a glimpse at this monster. I would prefer watching a horror film with a fake villain that I know doesn't exist, as opposed to watching something like this where it feels a little bit too close to home. Even though all of this stuff, Jeffrey Dahmer and his victims and things happened when I was quite young, I certainly don't remember it. I want to say that he was doing all of this stuff like late 70s, early 80s, which would put me very, very young. So I'm not, I don't remember Jeffrey Dahmer being in the news or anything like that when I was a kid. And this kind of just, I don't know, it puts it, like I said, a little bit too close to home. It's a little bit too realistic for me personally. That is just my own opinion of it. If you guys really love, true crime and it doesn't affect you in the way that it affects me, and I'm not saying that it should, I am definitely a baby. Like, things definitely hit me a little bit more personally than I feel like it does the average person, because I feel like for the most part, I don't know if there's, what is the word that they use it, if you're like empathic or you just can pick up the emotions of other people. I feel like I just generally do that in all situations. Doesn't matter. When I was a little kid, I remember like if my dad would yell at my sister and she would start to cry, I would start to cry, even though I was not the one that was in trouble. So sometimes watching shows like this, if it's too true to life, it's harder for me to sit through. Like Sins of Our Mother obviously was a documentary that was very true to life. It involved a lot of the family and their interviews and their experiences. And I just basically snot bubble cried the entire way through it. So shows like Monster are just not ones that I want to tune in and watch for an entire series. I don't even think that I have watched any of the like Jeffrey Dahmer documentaries because he just personally feels gross to me. I don't know. And a lot of serial killers, because of the way that they interact and the level of cold disconnect from humanity, I guess, makes it very difficult for me to watch interviews with them or things like that. And I much prefer, I think, documentaries and television series that are more from the perspective of the victims, because they definitely have a lot more connectivity to what heart is and what, people should be like. And even though it upsets me either way, there is something about watching this story and having it be told basically from the perspective of Jeffrey Dahmer, like getting to see sort of through his life and from what he explained happened. I just can't do it. So that's at least my opinion. I would love to know what you guys thought of Monster the Jeffrey Dahmer story. It definitely seems to be very popular, so I think that there are quite a lot of people out there that don't have as hard of a time sitting and watching stuff like this as I do. Love true crime. I love true crime, but I'm more of a like missing 411 kind of a true crime girl, like those strange stories, mysterious universe. That podcast is unbelievable for me. I like sort of weird things as opposed to like serial killer things. So let me know what you guys thought of Monster the Jeffrey Dahmer story. Subscribe if you want to join the Movie Nerd family, and I hope to see you in the next episode.